good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, citizens of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago and the wider Caribbean region and even internationally, and welcome to the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies as we host this afternoon into this evening our post-budget forum where we review the 2022 budget statement. My name is Colin Bartholomew, Head of Department for Cooperative Studies at the Cipriani College, and I will be your moderator for this afternoon. And I'm really pleased to be joined by a distinguished panel of commentators, and we position them as commentators this afternoon as we look at the budget statement for 2022. Now, as we get into this afternoon session, I would like to welcome you. You would be taking your feed through our various platforms, and I would like to encourage you as we participate in this afternoon's discourse that you can feel free to participate by posting your questions in the various chat regions where they will be received and they will be directed accordingly. And this afternoon, I have spoken about a distinguished panel, and just give me the opportunity to welcome Ms. Diane Hadad, Mr. Hayden Blades, and Mr. Michael Annisette to this forum hosted by Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a pleasure to have you here this afternoon into this evening. And of course, you can have this probably as a late lunch or early dinner as we attempt to digest, what is or what has been presented by the Minister of Finance on October the 4th. Now, as we go through this session, just to direct you, we will be introducing each panelist and giving them 5 minutes to present their discourse, their opinion, and their feedback on the budget statement. And thereafter, we will be getting into a discussion. Questions will be facilitated, and we have between now and the hour of 7 p.m. because we want to warm you up for news time as we get into this discussion. Now, the order of batting here this afternoon, I would start with Mr. Hayden Blades, followed by Ms. Diane Hadad, and then the middle order closing batsman, we have Mr. Michael Annisette. Now, just to introduce Mr. Blades as he, right before he delivers his presentation, Mr. Hayden G.S. Blades Jr., everyone knows him as Hayden Blades, is currently the president of Business Insight Limited. He is also a professional economist and has published analyses of the economy of Trinidad and Tobago for many years. Now, Mr. Blades has developed internal economic reports on countries and industries across the Caribbean that facilitated risk management and asset and liability management decisions. And he has also conducted strategic planning exercises on behalf of private sector entities, state enterprises, mortgage lending institutions, large credit unions, industry associations, media entities, and entrepreneurs. Now, Mr. Blades has done risk management of loan portfolio consisting of commercial enterprises and state enterprises, and has reviewed risk management practices of bank subsidiaries across the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. He has 18 years of lecturing experience, both at the undergraduate and postgraduate levels, and lectures on the subject matter of macroeconomics, finance, and strategic planning. He is also a lecturer and first examiner of macroeconomics course at the Arthur Lockjack Graduate or Global School of Business, as it's referred to, of the UWI for MSc students, and is an approved tutor lecturer for the world-ranked Heriot-Watt University, Edinburgh's Business School for courses such as economics, strategic planning, and strategic making strategies work. At this point in time, I'd like to welcome Mr. Hayden Blades. I mean, if I knew, I would have split the introduction, you know, to the opening and to the closing. And I also know you are a cooperator, having been involved with the credit union and cooperative sector as well. So, Mr. Blades, the floor is open for you to take it away for your discourse.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. I am honored to be here. Thank you to Cipriani College for the invitation. I am honored to have these kinds of discussions. You know, and really and truly because students are here. Students are part of this. And I've spent so much time with students trying to really bring them forward. I want to say welcome to Ms. Hadad. I want to say welcome to Comrade Annisette. I am honored to be here amongst you. Now I only have 5 minutes, but here's the thing. I actually put together 25 slides. so here's my 5-minute introduction. We'll talk about the slides a little later on. I just want to show a couple of things while I talk through this. I'm going to try and share my screen. Do this thing quickly. I only have 5 minutes. Share screen. And that. And then that. All right. Is everyone seeing my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Yes? All right.
Yeah.
All right. Good. Just let me put that like that. Oh. Still seeing it?
Yes, we are. Still seeing it.
All right. Let me just move this across. All right. Okay, good. Folks, let me just say this. This is my 5 minutes. The theme of the budget presentation this year was resilience in the face of a global pandemic. Look, folks, when I read through the budget statement, I do the economic analysis of our numbers, I get the feeling that we're at a stage in life in this country where the Minister of Finance kind of presented a budget that gave the squeakiest wheel the grease. It's like a form of our existentialism. Now, the media says this is a pandemic budget. This is not the first pandemic budget that we've had. This is our second pandemic budget. And I just want to talk quickly about a few of our fiscal trends. As a schematic of an economy and how it's supposed to work, according to what they call Trinidad and Tobago the market economy and how it's supposed to work, well, it's really about 3 markets: goods and services, labor, and capital. What we do in an economy is that we bring labor and capital together to produce what? Goods and services. Now, why is this happening? Because human beings, we have needs, and our needs revolve around goods and services. So very simply, the prices that we are paying and so on, a lot of that is dependent on the simple interaction between demand and supply. The students are going to go through this and they're going to call me and I'll discuss this with them via email. So here's where we are in 2021. We're in a situation where our fiscal revenue is declining. That's due to a lack of economic growth, of course. We are in a situation where, and this is very important, we are living in a situation of rising public debt due to the declining fiscal revenue, and of course, due to our heavily subsidized lifestyle. A large part of the government's expenditure has been considered to be non-discretionary. In other words, it's not something you could just cut away. It's not something you could just say, well, we ain't spending that. No, you can't do that. And then, of course, we have the issues of inefficiencies and wastage. We know about this. A major element of this declining fiscal revenue is the poor performance of our energy sector. So our energy sector has traditionally been one of the major contributors to fiscal revenue. I'm not talking about GDP, I'm talking about fiscal revenue. And it is that poor performance of that major contributor that has been a major part of this whole issue surrounding the declining fiscal revenue. But the non-energy sector
Recording in progress.
The non-energy sector is also poorly performing. Why? Because we are living through 18 months so far, I think, of a pandemic. And we have seen the shutdown of the economy, we've seen the shutdown of businesses and so on over the 18-month period. And of course, all of that is creating a major problem in the non-energy sector. The energy sector has a problem, yes, but for different reasons. We'll talk about that later. Look at this picture. Look at what is happening. Look to 2010. Come right back to the end of the 2010 and come forward to about 2020 to the end. Does that not look like a declining trend? Well, we have a declining trend in terms of our fiscal revenue. So your revenue is declining. Between 2010 and 2020, our fiscal revenue has declined by 22%. But here's the other side of the story. The other side of the story is that while fiscal revenue has been declining, you would think that, look, if you're working for less money, you have no choice but to spend less money. I mean I mean, if you're a householder, you're a worker, you have a family. If you are working for less money, chances are you will spend less money. Well, not really, in Trinidad and Tobago, our fiscal budget really doesn't operate like a householder's budget. And that's a story I could tell you separately. But here's the thing. Between 2010 and 2020, the central government total expenditure has only declined by 2%. 2%. But the fiscal revenue has declined, what did I say, 6%? Bearing in mind that throughout all these years, from 2010 to 2021, were all years of fiscal deficits. What am I saying? I'm saying that for all those years, from 2010 right through to 20, in fact, I did an estimation, and I think it's about 14 years, 14 consecutive years, we have endured living with fiscal deficits in Trinidad and Tobago. 14 consecutive. I'm not saying 14 years over 30-year period. I'm saying 14 consecutive years we have lived with fiscal deficits. But what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, it means that we borrow. We have to borrow, and we have been borrowing. And it means that we now have to live with, until we can resolve the issue, we now have to live with very high levels of foreign debt service. That's an important part. It's not just debt service. The foreign debt service is the challenge, because we have to have foreign money to service that debt. And what is our biggest challenge? You hear from the private sector, in the banking sector. What do they say? They can't get foreign exchange. We have to use a significant portion of whatever foreign exchange we are earning now to service debt. And we don't have a choice. It's not like something you could just ignore. It's not like something you could stop paying. So a large part, and I have the numbers, a large part of government's revenue is now dedicated, is now dedicated to foreign debt service. I have some numbers. In 2015, the situation got worse, and we saw the emergence of what we call a primary fiscal deficit. That means that after you deduct expenditure, and you're not deducting as yet interest payments. After you deduct expenditure from fiscal revenue, you're already in deficit. So you haven't even paid your debt yet. You haven't serviced the interest payments on your debt as yet, but you are in deficit. Now these numbers mean something to a lot of stakeholders, and it's very important. So I was thinking, look, what if your income is insufficient to cover all of your monthly expenses? But it's insufficient to cover all of your monthly expenses even before you took into account the interest expense payments you have due coming, what you owe, and just the interest. I'm not talking about the principal repayment, just the interest. So you are short of paying your bills after you pay your expenses, but before you pay your interest payments on your loans. Which means that your shortness, your revenue, has gotten even worse. So in order to fill these gaps, what we have to do, we have to borrow. We are using savings. and we've been seeing this gradually over time, we have to sell public assets. So there are three things in order for us to bridge this fiscal revenue that we're short of. We have to do three things. It's not one thing, it's three things. We are borrowing, we are using the Inheritance Stabilization Fund, and we are, of course, looking at selling public assets. Isn't that what the minister said? He said the government's going to sell some shares that they own in First Citizens. Let me just give you a sense of the debt. Our debt is rising consistently over time. And we are now, look at that number, 120. We are now above 120 billion TT dollars in debt. That's where we are. That's how far we have come. On a bar chart, well, it's obvious on a bar chart even more so. But from a GDP perspective, we have crossed the 80% debt being part of GDP. 80%, right? Measured by GDP. 80%, we can say, look, we have really hit the red line. Because in most economies, in most of the international institutions and so on, they will look very closely at the country. Once you cross that 60-70% of GDP, and that's your debt, and now your debt is at 80%, they're gonna pay very close attention to what's happening in Trinidad and Tobago. So debt payments have consistently risen from 6% in 2010 to 15% of revenue. So 15% of our revenue right now is going just to pay the interest, just the interest, I'm not talking about the principal, just the interest. We have major problems in energy. We have major problems in dealing with manufacturing, tourism, agriculture. We have major problems in ensuring that our consumers and our business sector, that they are confident in the future. And what they have proposed, I heard some of these comments being made. Trinidad and Tobago is now going to be pursuing the Manatee Field in conjunction with Shell, and so and Manatee Field borders the continental shelf. And who's next? Who's right there next door? Venezuela. So I don't know if anybody knows that Venezuela and Guyana have had this issue in terms of the use of that continental shelf, of that space around there. Venezuela at one point in time, well, until it's resolved, I suppose, at one point in time was claiming 75% of Guyana's territory. Yeah, look at that. So I don't know how you all feel, but do you think the economy is in trouble at all? Do you think we're in trouble? Do you think that we are at a point where we have to rethink things, change things, restructure, re-engineer things? I don't know. I think so. Look at these numbers. Economic growth. We are contracting. 2019, 1.2%. Decline in economy. Contraction. 2020, more contraction, 8.8%. And it goes on. It goes on. We're not doing as we ought to be. Our only solution is to grow, though. We have to grow our way out of this depression, right? This is not something that we could just cut expenditure to match revenue now. We're gone past that. We have to get more revenue. The cutting of expenditure, which is what we call austerity. Austerity measures don't fix the problem. This is a problem that requires expansion, growth. And I know the students understand the diagram I put up. Austerity is not good politics, nor is it good economics, right? Let me appreciate that. And a couple of other things I just wanted to say. Our critical analysis is that our economy has suffered initially from a shock to the labor market. I'm not talking about the energy sector. I'm just talking about the non-energy sector. There was a shock to the labor market because of the pandemic. So we had to keep people at home, right, in order to get through this pandemic. So that was our exogenous shock in the non-energy area. And we have to find a short-term response to what is happening. We can't go along hoping for the best. We need to find ways where we can generate growth, more revenue. Because if we can't hope to solve our challenge with less expenditure. We can't go down that road at all, that austerity road. It has failed the world over. We now have to find the revenue growth pathway. And I suppose that's what they're trying to do. Some solutions for us. Here's what we need to do. We need to protect home ownership. We need to protect jobs. We need to reinvent healthcare, re-engineer education, restructure public transport, rethink agriculture. On the investor side, we need liquidity. We need to re-energize export-oriented activities, energize. We need temporary FX rationing. That may help us with this with part of the FX problem. Oh, we need crime suppression. I wrote this slide probably a few months ago. We need to also ensure that we fund market and marketing research for firms in the non-energy sector, because we need to re-energize them, get them out there. We need to get ourselves into these new markets, into existing markets, but we need to be there in a more dominant way. There are ways to do these things, and I'm not seeing it. But what we live with every day, though, I mean, apart from the fiscal deficit that I just showed you and the accumulating debt as a result, we are living with deficits of good jobs. We're living with deficits of savings. We're living with deficits in the healthcare sector. We're living with deficits in the education sector. We are living with deficits in infrastructure. You know why? You know what's happening with infrastructure? What they have done is that they've cut back capital expenditure. They're cutting back capital expenditure. We have problems. There's one thing I wanted to show. Just one thing, one important thing. I had it here. All right, I probably don't have it there. Okay, just let me say this. What are the solutions to our fiscal issues? I'm not talking about the different sectors as yet. I'm just talking about from a macroeconomic point of view, from a fiscal point of view, what are some of the solutions? Here's what they've been doing. The political directorate, and I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm talking like since 2010, right? Since 2010. Here's what they've had to do. They have been reducing goods and services expenditure. The government has been buying less and less goods and services. They have been thinking and moving along the lines of reducing transfers and subsidies. They have been reducing capital expenditure. And if you remove the investment part from government spending, then you are reducing the size of the economy. You are contracting the economy. That's not what we need. We need to expand the economy. The government is saying they can only do so much. They have to keep spending, but they're not spending enough. They have to spend more. They have to spend more. They have to find a way to spend more. And you know why? Because we have to create an environment of growth, and more growth. Those are my points. I done it.
Fantastic. You put more runs on the board than anticipated there. So, I think you set a good standard, and you put a solid total on the board there for the upcoming presenters and panelists. So thanks so much. And I think it gave us a lot of discussion points in terms of where we go. And it was important too that it was placed in the economic context, especially in terms of the element of, growing out of a depression and what that will encapsulate. But we'll discuss as we go along. And next, moving swiftly along, we go to Miss Diane Hadad. Now, Miss Hadad is the owner and managing director of Jade Distributors Limited in Tobago. Miss Hadad is described as a single-minded, self-directed entrepreneur and leads her 3 companies, Jade Distributors, Chedis Patissier, and Jade Technology Limited. Experience spans roles such as sales and marketing manager for Pernod Ricard, Trinidad, and Trinidad Distributors Limited in Tobago, a division of the 𝘾𝘾𝙇𝘾𝙀 group of companies. So she is well known for being an outspoken advocate on Tobago issues, including not exclusive to business, but also to the Tobago economy, public administration reform and efficiency, and also on social issues such as crime in Tobago. Ms. Hadad has served as a director of the Airports Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and the St. Charles Educational Institute Limited as treasurer. See, she has served as a director of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce over non-consecutive terms since 2013. Ms. Hadad is also the chairman of the Tobago division of the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Industry Commerce and heads the committee responsible for the airport and the seaport. Now, Ms. Hadad, I know, just to re-emphasize, is very outspoken. She is very, she really brings solid opinion. And this afternoon, she will bring her contribution on the budget statement for 2022 to this forum of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. So, Ms. Hadad, your 5 to 10 minutes is now open before we get to the discussion.
I got 100% increase in time.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening to your viewers. I really want to start because it's interesting that you picked up a bio from wherever, that it has in there the St. Charles Educational Academy story. Mr. Blades has set really a great tone. And one of the things I want to stress is that we are in an education environment. This is about education. And for the last 7 years, I have really spent my entire weekends and public holidays and even more in that place, bringing it from a 0 point of closure to revamping it and changing culture, changing infrastructure, changing curriculum, and bringing it back to life. And I want to say that when Hayden was speaking, he could not have said it any better in terms of what the change has to take place for our country. It's almost as though just the same measures that are happening at home, which is the income cannot pay the bills and cannot pay the loans at this stage. It's happening at the home front. It's happening at the business level. And it's also, for me, I want to share the experience at St. Charles where that was the problem. But to take it out of that, first of all, it took years of dedication, very serious management in terms of controls, and it took a lot of hard work because you had to get the buy-in of the people that participate for them to understand the value of what you were doing. And it is in that vein that I have seen a beautiful change. And we started to see the change after 4 years. 3 to 4 years in terms of results, but in terms of what's being delivered and the environment and the children and their parents. And so I have seen the culture changing, which means that change is possible. What we need from change is the right leadership, because people have to first trust you. And in trusting you, you have to deliver what you speak on. So I want to say that this is just, I remember working in the 𝘾𝘾𝙇𝘾𝙀 group as it states there. And I remember being transferred to Trinidad from the Tobago sphere. And when I went to head office, I was told by a very senior party, I said, me, you're taking me from Tobago to come in the Trinidad market? No, that's just, and the person said to me, hey, you know what you have? You have the formula. All I need you to do is multiply it by 10 and you will cover the Trinidad market. So I want us to understand that the problem here is we as a country have really not agreed on what is the formula to get us out of where we are. So to Hayden's credit, he has given a lot of information. It's absolutely on point. The budget, as far as we would have understood from the Tobago end, and I have to admit, many people did not even listen. They were very frustrated from the Chamber's perspective. It was not interesting. And then they were disappointed because Hayden's data could not be more real. He said for the past 14 years, we are going down a road. And Tobago has been hurting for 13 years as I speak. So when we go back to 2005, where we had a little uptake in tourism, by 2008, it was killed, totally killed, by the decision makers who decided that we did not want foreign direct investment here, and all of it was locked off. So the story Hayden speaks of today in terms of no foreign currency and that whole story of not having relationships with the external countries and international bodies is because we chose as a country to, whatever in-house decisions went on, we chose to destroy it. And I did have a banking sector past. I was a part of Republic Bank, and I used to be at Crown Point Agency in those days, Crown Reef Hotel. And in the hotel, the amount of foreign currencies that we collected there, we had to be sending money down to Trinidad to Independence Square branch all the time. And it would be currencies that Trinidad has never seen. So I would have encountered Deutschmarks, French francs, Italian lira, you name it. And I had the experience of seeing it on this island called Tobago. And we had US coming in large amounts. But it will not be the amounts that we would be able to keep here, and we had to send to Trinidad. And therefore, what have we done to our own economy by doing what we did? Now, from the budget perspective, I don't know that the budget has addressed any of those things. What we were hoping to hear and what was missing is how are we going to, from a financial perspective, which is the same thing Hayden is speaking about, the moving of the money through the system to allow the breathing space. Because while I'm using the example of St. Charles, it's 7 years of money that had to be invested and time, and you are now only able to start to come out of it, to start to be able to repay what was the borrowing. And I'm saying that to say that that is the formula that is going to take us out as a people out of this. So where's the private sector, which needs to be encouraged to be able to invest and spend money and do whatever? But at this stage, I don't know that people have money to spend. People have already utilized savings, they're already scraping. How do they? There's a juggle, if you listen to people, between paying the electricity bill and paying the loan, paying the light bill, paying the flow bill, paying whatever it is. And these are the stories that you have, and not just from a business perspective, but from a home perspective. So although we had in the budget all of these claims of expenditures for pandemic relief and so, the money has not gone into the right spaces, and clearly it did not do what it should have done. And so I don't know that the budget has addressed our economic fallout or economic problems for the last 19 months. The pie in the sky of a hotel coming, we know that the EMA and all of those things take 2 years to start with. So while that is a topic of conversation, that will not be realized anywhere near 2022. And so to the students that are there listening, the real story is our country needs to sit down and have a financial model. It does not fit into what we work with now. And I was really hoping to hear that from our Minister of Finance as to how we are going to work with our serious private sector to get this economy back up, get jobs back up, get the education system to a level that really brings out the right minds into our country, because we are doling out certificates. We are not bringing out the whole human who takes into account the entire aspect of life and what their contribution means. So it's almost as though we have found ourselves in a tailspin of how do I just get into the system so I could ride through this and collect a pension. It's not that we are creating human beings that are going to go out there and be self-motivated and be creators and be expressors, and that they can actually do. And therefore, we have stymied our people, and we need to open the mind. So I want to say that the budget was disappointing. I think the second title was best suited. It's the grease that was making the most, the wheel that was making the most squeaks got some grease. And we haven't addressed the real problems of what the pandemic has done, on top of a decline that we have been experiencing, and I want to say for Tobago, for the last 13 years. So thank you very much, Colin.
That's very welcome, powerful stuff there. Thank you so much for that contribution. And even in terms of that financial model you just spoke about, I know as we get deeper into the discussion, even some of contributions made by Mr. Blades, you know, that would augur well for some discussion. And those of you, I know students are there, I know other participants are there, feel free to share your questions in the chat area, because we are going to open forum soon. So of course we will enter that discussion, especially, and I'll be honest, currently I'm an academic, and the discussion that you all have really placed there, I mean, it's a really solid footing to enter into the classroom, into real economic discourse. So thanks so much for those contributions. Next up, we have Mr. Michael Annisette, no stranger to the Cipriani College Corridors, and he is the President General of the Cement and Waterfront Workers Trade Union, also known as the SWWTU. He is also the General Secretary of the National Trade Union Center, NATUC, and the Caribbean Congress of Labor, CCL. Now, Mr. Annisette is the Vice Chair of the International Transport Workers Federation, known as the ITF, for Latin America and the Caribbean region. And he's also a member of the Offshore Task Force International Negotiating Group. Mr. Annisette has been actively involved in the trade union movement for over 35 years and has served on numerous local, regional, and international workers' federations and unions. He has held appointments as director on several boards, including the Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, UDCOT, the Vehicle Maintenance Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago, VMCOT, and the Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Company, TTMF, National Insurance Board, and the National Insurance Property Development Company, NIPDEC. He is a sitting director on the Board of Governors of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, and he is also a former independent senator of the 9th Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Now, we have really brought a rich panel here for you this evening. So as we continue our discourse, I'd like to welcome Mr. Annisette to the fore as he unmutes his mic and delivers his 5 to 10 minute presentation. As Ms. Hadad said, I'm increasing the currency. She's no stranger to that appreciation in value. Mr. Annisette.
Yeah, good day, comrades. You all are here with me?
Loud and clear, sir.
All right, okay. All right, again, let me express my thanks and appreciation for the work that is being done and for this webinar. I think it is timely. I think it is appropriate. And again, for allowing labor to put its perspective as it relates to the economy, as it relates to the budget. And the first point that we will want to make, and I'm saying we deliberately, because I'm talking for the labor movement, is that a budget is not about maths. It's not about balancing your books. A budget is about your people. A budget is about your society. A budget is about your politics. A budget is about your culture, who you are, what you are as a people. And if we view the budget from that context, you will begin to appreciate the disappointment that we had within the labor movement as it relates to the budget. And I will want to tickle the imaginations of some of my students and those who are listening. In 2019 to 2020 budget presentation, what was the word? Stability, strength, and growth. That is what was said by the Honorable Minister of Finance. And today, we talk about resilience in a time of pandemic. But the question that I believe that we have to ask ourselves, which was lacking in the budget, is what kind of research or what kind of evaluation would have been done in respect to the 2019 to 2020 budget, given what the budget said, what the budget was saying that they wanted to accomplish, and I don't know if some of our members will recall some of the things that was being said. There was the project in library, right? There was the question of housing. There was the question of agriculture, and I can go on and on and on and on. But where are we in this budget? Was there an evaluation? Was there research? Was there anything to tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago where we at? Where did we go wrong? Did we spend the money correctly? Did we get value for the money? Because those are some of the fundamental issues, with the greatest respect, that I believe that must be part of any discourse or any narrative that we are having in the context of Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to repeat again, our budget is about me and you and who we are as a people. And therefore, if you exclude us from the budget and just makes it into a presentation of allocation of our money and our fiscal measures without really looking at the real issues that are affecting the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and by extension, the economy, well then there's no need for a budget debate, in my view. Having said that, what I want to say that the question of revenue management must be part of the discourse. It must be part of the debate. The question of revenue efficiency, which people do not talk about that. Because what I have learned, all right, and any business person is going to tell you, and any economist, my learned friend, is there. The revenue efficiency means that if I spend $1, right, my dollar must be able to make back something for me. All right, and then we have this mistaken notion that, e.g., you have a house, and we say a house is an asset. A house is not an asset unless the house is bringing back revenue for you. If you are giving out by way of rent, by way of light bills and all, and insurance, and you are not getting any revenue coming in from the house is not an asset, it is a liability. And I'm making that point in the context of the budget. So then we talk about revenue efficiency indicators. That was lacking, right? What is the returns that we would have gotten on any of the investments that we would have made? And I want to make a fundamental point, students and my listening public, that the trade union movement have been making over and over. My learned friend said it in his own way, but I want to bring it down to what I will call ground zero. No economy can grow unless there is wage growth led within the economy and also job led. What do I mean by that? If workers do not have wages, if the government takes a conscious decision, like how this government would have done, by not paying wages to a certain academic institution from since 2007, the academic staff have been working on 2007 salaries. When the government takes the decision that they are not going to increase wages for government employees, because government is an employer, and we must be able to divorce the government as a government and the government as an employer, because the government as an employer have some responsibilities as it relates to the right to collective bargaining, which is enshrined within the ILO Constitution, for which this government is part of. And having said that, how do you justify as a government that you took a decision without any discussions with your employees that I am not going to pay wages from since 2013? And let me add, where there were wage increases, e.g. the Port Authority, the dock workers, for 2014 and 2007, this government said, no, they're not going to authorize the board to pay port workers, e.g. NIB. There was a legitimate negotiated settlement for the NIB workers. And the government said, no, we are not mandating you to pay these workers. So what kind of economic situation are we talking about? We are therefore talking with the greatest respect of a situation that if you want the economy to grow, people must have the ability to purchase the goods and service that is being produced. Because if there is no one to buy the goods and service, if there's no one outside there that has the ability to buy the goods and service as workers, well, then your economy will be on an economic precipice. But that is, I'm bringing it down simple. I don't want to get into the highfalutin, all right, economic jargons and talk, so that the people who are listening will begin to understand where the trade union movement is coming from. You have to expand your economy for your economy to grow. We cannot continue as a society. We cannot continue as a government to determine unilaterally that, listen, we are going to keep depending on the oil and gas industry, all right, and not look at the question of diversifying your economy in order to attract other ways and means of income. Because the oil industry, yes, we make a lot of money, and I could talk about that, but it is fickle. It can go up and it can go down tomorrow, because the government would have estimated their budget for this budget on $45 per barrel. Now it may go up and it may very well go down. Why? Because we do not have any control over the geopolitical issues that can affect, right, the question of oil and gas in the world. And therefore, our continued reliance on gas and oil is a disservice to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Let me give you an example. The National Trade Union Center, for which I'm General Secretary, have been placing on our budget wish list to the government the need to go into the maritime sector, because it is so important. We have carried up, okay? And for 10 years, we have been saying that. I have seen that the Honorable Minister would have said, hey, we're going and take over Caridox. The government is going and buy it, all right? But the question is to me, comrades, brothers and sisters, why will it take us 10 years to start to make those kinds of thought process when we know that that is so critical? Let me make another point about the budget. In this budget and in the 2019 budget, could you recall that the government saying that they were making provision for hotspots for internet and for our children to get the laptops and the smartphones? Because of the COVID situation, we would have displaced a lot of people for people who families could not afford that. But we went into virtual learning. And in this budget now, we are talking about another $50 million. The question is how do you determine $50 million? How do we evaluate what happened with the educational system, given the virtual nature of the educational system, and how did it affect the communities and those less disadvantaged people who, as a consequence of their inability to buy a laptop or to buy a smartphone or to buy a tablet, places the children, all right, which is our critical resource, our children, at a disadvantage by not being able to participate in the educational system. And I think the budget must answer these things, because those are people-centered issues. And if we do not answer that, well, then the budget, in the union humble opinion, means nothing. The other thing that the trade union movement have been saying is that raising the minimum wage does not necessarily mean that there will be a fall off of jobs because the minimum wage would have gone out. And the most important thing is 3 economists win Nobel for research on wage job. And you know what they concluded? Just like how we concluded in the labor movement that increased wages is good for your economy. They concluded, because they did a study in the United States with the Wendy's, the KFC, and all these people, that it had at that time 79% of the economists from their institution was saying that minimum wages, the increase will slack off employment. The research showed something different. In other words, the point that the trade union want to make, and I'm speaking on behalf of the trade union movement, that when you continue to look at things within a traditional economic sense, or as I say, balancing the budget, and you expect to do that 10, 15 years and get, a different answer, well, then there's a saying, for that, we become mad. So I will want to conclude by saying, the issue of productivity, the issue of job-led growth, the issue of wage-led growth has to be fundamental in moving this economy forward. If we fail to do that, if the government continue with their austerity measures by depressing wages deliberately for the last 8 to 10 years, and in some instances, as I make reference to 2007, for academic staff, well then, no matter what we say about the budget, no matter what we say, no matter what conversation that we have here, Trinidad and Tobago will end up in an economic tailspin. And I want to conclude by saying, I think we have a responsibility, moral and otherwise, as elders, as different, it's 3 different categories of people, but we are almost saying the same thing. We have a responsibility now to rise to the occasion, stand up, let our voices be heard, to ensure that the economic realities is faced by the government, to ensure that the unilateralism that I elect you and I can do whatever you say, hush your mouth, that has to go through the window. And we have to find a mechanism whereby the society, the communities, the youths, civil society, the trade unions, the academics, the business people, the government, everybody come together in order to put our collective wisdom together for a better Trinidad and Tobago. It cannot be, and it must not be, that we vote a government in, and there's this feeling that they have the absolute right to do whatever they want as a government, and we cannot say anything. And I just want to add in one more thing. You see that Seabridge fiasco that happened? In any other country, the government would have fallen. In any other country. But that is another topic that we're going to raise. And if people ask the question, I would be willing to go into it. And I am sure that my erstwhile colleague and friend and business person will be able to back up everything that I am saying, given the missteps that the government made with the Sea Bridge that caused the economy of Tobago to nosedive and deep dive at a level that in our estimation going to cost Tobago about another 5 or 10 years to really come out of what this government would have put us into based on their decisions. And that's the point that I want to make. Those days must come to an end. We, the people, have to be part of those decision-making processes. Thank you, comrades, and I will wait for the question.
No, I mean, thank you so much, Mr. Annisette. I think this is really fertile ground. What these forums really show me time and time again is that there is the need for these avenues of discourse. And we really need to sit and have these discussions. And we are really fortunate to have a cross section of presentations, you know. I mean, Hayden Blades getting into some academia and moving it into the practical, and Ms. Hadad just gently massaging those elements. And of course, Comrade Annisette getting into some hot topics and very topical issues. And as we get into the discussion, I just want to take you through some of the vagaries of the elements we'll touch. I know a number of you work in different sectors and champions and leaders of industry. So we'll touch on those matters as well. We'll touch on some of the educational component because we use these discourses back in the classroom. I can tell you without a doubt, these things form topical discussions as well as material for coursework. And then also we'll touch on some general information which you have really brought up. Now, I want to be honest, this is an open discussion. Feel free at any time to interject and add to something a colleague may put on the table or a fellow panelist, as well as if you would like to bring up an area for the discussion, we will be facilitating all that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, we just have a little over an hour to enter into that discourse. So as we get into it, I really want to put something to Hayden in terms of your presentation. I was happy to see you put your 3 C's context into the discussion. And of course, I mean, trained as an economist myself, I saw you brought up the Keynesian model in terms of the conceptual framework and the context in terms of that. And it's really about focusing on consumer confidence and investor confidence, as both Mr. Annisette and Ms. Hadad spoke on. So with that run up, if you could just fertilize that context, and especially as you position it, a solutions-oriented approach to the deficiencies, as you would have seen it in the budget, how will that take the country, the economy of Trinidad and Tobago in the direction of really greater self-sustainability?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. Okay, let me understand the context and the conceptual frameworks that we're applying here. We are talking about the Keynesian model. Sorry, let me apologize to everyone else. I need to just talk a little bit about the economics. That's a little bit. We are talking about utilizing a Keynesian approach. Why are we utilizing this particular model? We're utilizing this particular model because it has very useful short-run information that we can kind of appreciate for Trinidad and Tobago in the short run, right? We're not going to try and negotiate whether or not we're going to apply this for the long run, but in the short run. Why? Because we are saying we need to find ways to grow this economy. We need to focus on the fundamentals of growing this economy in the short run, and then we will have strategies and policies for the medium, and then we'll have strategies and policies for the long run. All right. So in the short run, right now, we need to do 2 things, very importantly, to grow this economy. And I'm starting from the top of the pyramid. I'm going to come down slowly. At the very top of the pyramid, we need to ensure that people feel more confident about the future of Trinidad and Tobago. How do you help people to feel more confident about the future of Trinidad and Tobago? I listed them out in some slides here. We're talking about things like home ownership. Very important. Protect home ownership. Let people feel comfortable that they have a future in Trinidad and Tobago. And if they can't afford their mortgage, help the situation in some particular way. And from a fiscal perspective, you can do that. You can do that. from a parliamentary perspective, you can do that. In conjunction with the central bank, you can do that. Help people to keep their homes. Step one. Step two, jobs. We need to ensure that in the same way, I don't know, I mean, you folks are probably too young to remember this, but in 2008, 2009, when there was a great recession, the great financial crisis in the it started in the United States and it spread globally. What did the US do? Barack Obama, he had just won the election and he was now president from around January 2009, something like that. What did they do in terms of enhancing employment? Why did they want to? Because unemployment was going to crash the economy. They understood that. They understood that 75% of consumer spending was their economy. And therefore, they needed to get people to spend more. How do you get people to spend more? Make sure they have money to spend. Make sure they have jobs, right? How do you ensure that people have employment? You've got to create that enabling environment that helps the private sector to see the benefits of hiring people under certain circumstances. You can provide incentives, tax incentives and so on to enable employment, etc. But we have to have that kind of conversation, but you're not hearing that conversation coming out from the budget presentation, the subsequent budget debate. You know, you got to create the job environment. You have to create that enabling environment. You've got to make it attractive even for the private sector. I mean, look, the government, they will hire people. Yeah, they will hire people. And pay them whatever the government will have. But you want the private sector to feel that it is worth their effort, their investment to rehire people. Okay, I'll give you an example. Look, so all the bars and all the hotels and so on, right now, do you think that they have the working capital to just rehire people, purchase new inventory, and reopen their doors? And voila, everything is back to normal? No.
Will be a challenge, yes.
No, it's not going to happen. That's not how it happens. That's not how a business works. That's not how an economy works. And I you know, I think that maybe I don't believe that the political directorate, I don't believe that they don't know this stuff. They must know this. And even if they don't know it, then ask a question. You know what I mean? Ask a question. Because we need to find ways to get these businesses in operation again. And then those businesses being in operation, they have customers coming in. Of course, you have to have employees, right? Now, you run up against, okay, so we had initially we had this exogenous labor shock. Something outside the economy mess up the labor market, right? This pandemic, COVID-19, everybody had to stay home. So nothing is happening. Nothing is being produced, and therefore no transactions can take place, and therefore no incomes can be generated. People staying home. Are the workers getting paid? I don't know. For how long? I don't know. For how long? I don't know. Why? Because there is no supply of goods and services, and therefore there is no transaction between buyer and seller, and therefore there is no income being generated because there's no demand supply, there's no transaction. You follow me? So,
no, before you go in, Ms. Hadad, I saw your hand was raised. So hold that point, because I know you want to come in.
Ms. Hadad, you hold that point. Let's just get to the end. So we need to create that enabling environment, especially now, to ensure that we can reintegrate, regenerate employment, jobs, investment, business activity. And look, let's separate it. We have to separate the energy and the non-energy perspectives. energy perspective is very different to what's happening on the non-energy side. Very different. The energy, understand that energy is really about, is a fully export-oriented component of our economy. What I'm talking about is the non-energy side that deals with both the domestic economy and also exports. So we separate the two, non-energy from energy. But the point is very simple. And what we didn't hear in the budget are really all of the necessary mechanisms to create consumer confidence and investor confidence. Yes, we could hold hands with the foreign direct investors, the multinationals, and as long as we give them sufficient incentives and so on, give them the tax break, the 25 years tax breaks and so on, they will come, right? We just have to make sure though that the crime suppression thing, we have that under control, because they may view Trinidad and Tobago as a dangerous place to live, to bring their family to. So that's something that we have to be very concerned about. Yeah. At least if we're not concerned about it for the average Trinbagonian, at least be concerned about it, about getting the foreign direct investors to come and bring their families here. I hope everybody understands.
Yeah, man. Well received, Ms. Hadad.
I just want to go, because while Hayden speaks of short, medium, and long term, the first thing that needs to happen really is we need to stabilize this economy before we even get to short term. The thing is chaotic, and it is silently chaotic, which is the more frightening part. We need to stabilize the private sector. And therefore, some rules need to be put in place in terms of bringing a halt to different things, foreclosures, getting on people for debts and that. So there needs to be something in the now, which is what I spoke about in terms of the financial part of it. And then you needed to have creative solutions to deal with each individual according to how this thing affected them. So the parameters with which our financial institutions work needed to get very flexible so that they could have made decisions that allows them to work with people. And let me say, I keep hearing people say, well, they are private sector and they have to answer to their shareholders. Let us be real. If the shareholders do not recognize that they have a role to play in terms of building back the economy, I don't know who's going to be there to buy all the things that wrap up and fold up anyway. So shareholder or not, you are going to see the effects of it one way or the other. So we need to understand that what has not been addressed is the now. And the first thing that needs to happen is we need to bring stability. That has not been touched at all. It's as though it's just off the table. There's no conversation. It's as though we're ignoring it. And all the presentations that are being made is as though we are all dealing with filthy rich people. It's like it's a gate society. And so we don't have to worry about where the money is going to come from, because these wicked private sector people have money. So let them go and take it out from under their beds or whatever it is, and let them bring it here and mind the people. The role of government through this pandemic was to ensure that its people were taken care of in all aspects, not just medically. There was the financial, the spiritual, the physical, all the aspects of it. And we have failed miserably, and as much as everybody wants to speak about how great, whatever, it was well shammed and well covered. And so we now have a different problem. We have people that are so frightened that I don't even know if they know how to live anymore. I don't even know if you said carnival tomorrow morning, would people get up to go and jump up? Or if you said free show, free fete, Marshall, everybody can enter. I don't know how populated it will be, because we have taken away that from our people. And I have to say, sadly, my people, you allowed it to happen. We need, Colin, to stabilize where we are. We need to get a true picture again in terms of what is the real effect of this on a business. People do not have money to restart. They do not have the finances to pay the debts that they have incurred. They need labor. They need a start. So I said it at the beginning of the pandemic. This is so funny. In April of 2020, I did an interview on TV6 and I said it. We need to bring a halt to all the financial aspects of debt. And we needed to immediately give people some measure of a term, knowing what the term is. The term needed to be whether it's 2 years or whatever. Halt the thing. People need to understand how they're going to restructure and then come with a proposal in terms of how I'm going to get out of this with new money, and then I deal with my debt. But to try to add debt to debt and get out of this, we are going nowhere very fast. And more what you are having is some people who are fortunate to have some money from whatever income they would have generated in the past by whatever means, looking to prey on those who have found themselves in difficulty. And it's a very unfair situation. And what it's going to cause is people to react in a very negative way. What are those reactions? Unfortunately, we're seeing them all over the world for who's paying attention and who is not. And we need to start to address it. And so, as a nation, we are missing that in our leadership. And unfortunately, at both levels, both at opposition and the chair of prime ministership. And so we are not seeing the leadership guidance in terms of, hey, my people have just been locked away 19 months. We don't know. I don't know how they're eating. I don't know what's going on. Clearly, if they used to earn $7,000 in a household or $5,000, now they were earning zero. How are they paying their bills? How are they living? Do they have electricity? Do they have food to eat? Me giving them a crocus bag with some stuff in it and calling it a hamper once in the 19 months doesn't fix the problem. So we need to understand that that did not even touch where the problem is, and we need to have it addressed. We need to separate who are party people, who are not party people. We need to get down to dealing with God's people, and that's where the thing is calling.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. And before I invite anything from Mr. Annisette, I mean, so many things to touch on, especially, you know, that perspective of the shareholders controlling their finances. And there's a model known as the credit union model where, you know, the ownership is placed more directly in the hands of the people. And, you know, the discussion along that lines. And I mean, leadership, the FDI, foreign direct investment, but both yourself and Hayden's touched also on ownership. And here we're talking about it may be in the assets such as homes, but also in terms of ownership of your own business. And that's something, you know, we will get into the discussion after Mr. Annisette comes in to make his contribution. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Comrades, I'm listening copiously to my two colleagues. And I think it is something that is missing that no one wants to talk about. And it's the question of vaccine apartheid. We are talking about people coming together. And if you have a society as small as Trinidad and Tobago, when you are talking about safe zones, where people who have the vaccine and those who don't have it cannot go, you are talking about this about escalating the issue of unemployment. All right, and I want to tie it into the points that my two colleagues have been making, that your growth of your economy, all right, is dependent on employment, people earning our money. And if you separate the society as we are doing presently, and I mean, we are seeing so many employers and the government indirectly who are setting up this division within the vaccinated and the non-vaccinated, which can have a dire effect on our economic growth and future of Trinidad and Tobago. I think that has to be put in the context of the conversation too, because I think we have to be brutally frank. There's a saying that I always use, is that the truth have no friends or the truth have no partners. And therefore, we need to put those kinds of truth on the table, because that is part of the issue. Because even though if it is stabilized, all right, and it will take a lot of doing given the direction that I see, that the economic direction that the government wants to point us into. And that is why I continue to make the point that the time has come to for Cipriani College as an institution, for the civil society and everybody to come together. And I want to make one fundamental point here. There's a philosophy that speaks to a pyramid that grows an economy. And that pyramid is economics, is politics, and is culture. And the description of economics is the creative and productive capabilities and capacity of your people. That is what economics is about. And if you take it away by any form, shape, and fashion, be it through education, be it through what is happening, because what the pandemic would have exposed is the amount of disadvantaged people we have in our communities and society. It was frightening. All right, and then we have to start to, as my learned friend said, we start to look at everybody, and everybody must be treated as a people one, and those who are in dire need of the assistance, we have to start to zero in on those people. Because if you have a family like I would have seen that can eat 3 square meals a day, or only eat a piece of beef or a piece of chicken every Sunday because they do not have money to do that. What we are doing is creating a society with children who nutritional value, which is required for their brains to go, will fall by the wayside, and we are creating a society that we will live together. Right? And the other point that I wanted to make was the question of politics. Politics is not about any charismatic leader or any, I certain God, what I say is goes, or I'm the maximum leader and I have to make all the decision, right? Politics is about the administration of the affairs of the nation in the interest of the people, and not your political financiers or supporters, right? It has to go across the board. And we must talk truth. And you made a fundamental point. The credit union have a role to play to empower the communities, because we cannot continue within a society where it only have a certain group of people that controls almost everything within your society, right? In terms of business, that is a prescription, right, for social disruption. And then culture. What is culture? Culture is not about beating a drum or a steel band or August marching with the African. No, culture is who we are. Culture is what we eat. It's what we sleep. It's what our community is all about. It's about us. It's about me and you. And until we begin to understand that, I am saying that we are going down into an economic precipice that we're going to live to regret. We must start to put those things on the table. We must change the conversation. We must change the dynamics to ensure that no one is left behind. And education, I want to touch it again. How many of us are aware, as we have this conversation, how many children are leaving school who are not able to read and write? In the 21st century, that's a reality. Don't let us fool ourselves. And that's something we ought to be talking about, because that speaks about economics too. The education of your population on your young is important for the development of the economic lifeblood of your economy. And if we disregard that, what are we doing? We are producing the gangsters, the drug lords, or the little person on the block who will get shot and who will get killed. because they're selling a little something. All right, the cocaine coming in and nobody knows who I'm bringing it in. How does these young people in these depressed communities get those kinds of guns? Do they have money to do it? Do they have the money to bring in the cocaine and the drugs? Those are conversations we can't push under the table because it is so important and critical, in my humble view, to what economic is about. Because it's about people, it's about your society, it's about who we are, just like culture and just like politics. And therefore, we have to get that pyramid going and recognize it and start to address those issues, because they are fundamental social issues that the pandemic would have demonstrated. In 2020 January, NATUC wrote the Prime Minister and the Minister of Education and tell them, hello, this pandemic is not a health issue only. It is a social and economic issue, and you must bring all, right, the players together. It cannot be the government alone. They didn't even acknowledge our letter. And look what happened 18 months after. Look at what happened. And as one of my panelists rightly say, if you don't have a leader with vision and foresight and humility and humanity, we in deep, I don't want to use the word, we in deep problems. Because it starts with leadership, and it starts with our population buying into and having faith and trust and respect for the institutions and our leaders and our elders. Yeah. And that is going through the window. Thank you, comrades. Thank you.
Excellent. Wow, Comrade Annisette. So as you're speaking there, I don't know if it's you was moving or the earth around you was moving, but some with shaking contributions there. So I saw Hayden, I saw your hand. Yeah, I know you wanted to interject. Yeah.
Folks, Comrade Annisette, I'm proud to hear you. I hear you. I understand what you're talking about. You're talking about equity in society. Yeah, you're talking about fairness in the society, right? But Comrade Annisette, you know that since independence, we have never really encountered that equity and fairness. To this day, we talk about prestige schools. After all that was done in the education system, we're still talking about prestige schools. And evidently, those schools tend to do better than the other government schools. Why is that? And what are the implications of that? And how long has that been evident to us all? But we never have that conversation, right? The concordat it reigns supreme. And nobody, no politician, wants to tackle the issue and bring it to the parliament and move a motion and change a legislation and deal with the issue of the prestige school versus the others. But let me just sum it up this way. You know what we're getting now? You know what message? You know what's in narrative? We in the narrative of we are buying time and selling hope. That's what you're getting from the political director now. They're buying time and selling hope to the masses, to the voters. Let me tell you how things are going to turn out over the next few years. Unless the government is able to grow this economy, and unless the government is able to improve its fiscal revenue, hear me, follow me. Here's what's going to happen. In one of the line items in government expenditure, government also purchases. I'm not talking about government investment. I'm not talking about capital expenditure. I'm talking about government purchases goods and services, right? Government purchases. That number is coming down. So the goods and services that government will purchase, unless we can grow this economy, grow it out of its depression, the government will have no choice but to manage its expenditure downward. Why? Because as I just showed you, the fiscal expenditure is moving downward. It's trending downward. So ultimately, eventually, they won't have a choice They can't just keep borrowing, using the savings from the health and the Heritage and Stabilization Fund and selling assets. They can't just do that indefinitely. So if fiscal revenue is trending downwards, ultimately, total expenditure has to trend downwards. And I'm going to tell you some of the areas they're going to cut. They have no choice. They're going to cut goods and services. You've seen it already. They're going to reduce transfers and subsidies. What are the implications of transfers and subsidies? People with the transfers. Lots of our people who need the government's help. Transfers. Pensioners. Transfers. Fixed income people. That's what I'm talking about. They're the ones who are going to be affected horribly in all of this. But hold on. Subsidies. You're seeing that conversation, right? The subsidies, the fuel subsidy. See that? TNTech, WASA. Yeah? You see those conversations happening? That's about the subsidies. So what we're going to see, a gradual removal in transfers and subsidies. Here's the other implication of the subsidies. You start messing with those subsidies. Yes, you're trying to create a more robust market-based economy, price-driven economy. So demand and supply will determine the ultimate price, and therefore the government will no longer be involved in a market price. But what does that mean? You know what that means? It means that what we're going to experience is a little more inflation. Not because demand is fueling inflation. It's not going to be demand pull inflation. It's going to be cost push inflation. Subsidies are going to start coming down. The transfers, they're gonna mess with the transfers on the edges, because there are political consequences. So they're gonna mess with the edges. That's the edges. Oh, I told you during the presentation, capital expenditure from the government is coming down. It's trending downwards. We need government capital expenditure. It's a form of government investment. Like how we have private sector investment, and we talk about how private sector investment is so important, and we talk about foreign direct investment. Well, the capital expenditure part of government expenditure, that's coming down. But here's the thing. So if we believe we can't live perpetually with future fiscal deficits, those are the things that's where you're going to see your expenditure coming down. So unless we recover revenue, the implications for the working class, the implications for the masses is one, cost push inflation, higher unemployment, and maybe the one opportunity that maybe the credit unions can encourage is that if you see the government selling something, a public asset like TSTT shares, or maybe they might turn to TNTech, one of the generator companies, they might be selling the shares. Maybe the credit union can help in terms of helping their members borrow some money to buy them shares. Maybe. I see that as a little opportunity in there. And we've always talked about ownership, right, Colin? We've talked about ownership, the importance of ownership and so on. All right. So that's an opportunity. But what I'm saying is, unless we find a way to grow this economy, Ms. Hadad says it has to start not short term, but immediately. Fine. Tomorrow morning, let us start talking about growing this economy. Let us go and stand up by Parliament and tell the political directorate to find a way to grow this economy. And we're not in this austerity story. Grow the economy. You know why? Because this, they call it structural adjustment. This structural adjustment is not equitable. This structural adjustment that we've been forced to engage in from time to time, now especially, is that it's not equitable. Not everybody's going to be forced to engage in structural adjustment imposed by the government. Some people, and this is what Comrade Annisette is saying, some people are going to live ignoring that. They don't have no time with that. They don't have no need to worry about that. But the masses, the people who are working class, the people who are the aspiring middle class, they are the ones who are engaged and forced to suffer through structural adjustment. And I showed you some of the deficits, the bigger deficits that we have to deal with, the health deficit, the education deficit, the climate deficit, and so on. Those are the conversations we should be having, but we're not having it. And you got to ask yourself, why not?
Why not?
We have the fourth estate, the media. Aren't they supposed to be driving these discussions? Is not their role, their mandate? Why isn't it happening? Why isn't it happening? I listen, I could go and ask the media, you know, but they know me. They can give me a straight answer. All I'm saying is, folks, is that we're looking at cost push inflation. We're looking at higher rates of unemployment. We are looking at the challenges to find ways to borrow, use our savings, and of course, sell public assets to bridge the gap between fiscal revenue and expenditure. So what's our fight? Our fight going forward, you know what it really is? It really is, in simple terms, we're borrowing to live. That's what we're doing. But we can't do that perpetually, permanently. We're borrowing to live, people. And how long do you think, as a country, at a macro level, you can borrow to live? How long? How long we can sustain this for? That should be the theme of the how long should have been the simple. How long? How long are we gonna do this? Right? You're living in a family, you're living in a home. And as you grow older, you get to do certain things about it. And you begin to ask your parents, well, if this is how we live in, how long are we gonna live like this? How long before we can't service the debt? How long we can't buy groceries? How long? Where is the revenue? Where is the growth? That's what we're missing. Right.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Ms. Hadad, I don't know if you want to add to that, because I really want to ask you a question before I really open up the floor for any more solutions. Any?
Ask the question.
Right. Good. In terms of, and you know, I haven't seen you in different forums, you know, and moving towards, there's a precursor to the solutions questions in terms of getting into empowerment of the people. I know you would have seen the perspective for both Trinidad and where you reside in Tobago. Empowerment in terms of ownership of business, and how much of that of the budget statement inspire that confidence to get into business, sustainable business. Did you see, was it awe-inspiring in terms of getting or drawing people into that realm of business ownership? And you really, one, from the ease of doing business perspective, two, from the sustainability and growth perspective, and then thirdly, in terms of the entrepreneurial ecosystem for Trinidad and Tobago.
So let me start by saying, Colin, that to begin with, you know, there's a saying that you can develop your people to become entrepreneurs or whatever. I have to tell you, I firmly have come to the point where I don't believe that. I think entrepreneurship and so is a gut thing. It really comes from inside. It comes from either the environment you're grown in. It comes, to me, you're born with it. And why I say that is, in many families, you would see that somebody may come from a family of 3 or 5 or 6 or whatever, but only one will come out and bite it and go. The others will go into what Hayden was calling, you know, these secure places and positions and stable incomes. So it definitely cannot be environment either or altogether. It has to be something that's in you from small, from birth, you know, that this is your path. One of the major errors we've made is we try to buy people by telling them we're going to make them into entrepreneurs, so we give them a grant. There's nothing substantial behind it, meaning that they don't have the accounting or the mathematical wherewithal. They do not understand what it will take for them to carry on their business for a period of whether it's 6 months or 8 months before they start to really generate any kind of revenue coming in that they can be self-sustaining. The myth that you get in there and you should have profit in the first year is another myth. All of those things are quite wrong. You really catch your nenen and our balance for the first 3 to 5 years. And you really have to be very, very, very organized and sacrificing before you start to see anything that looks like success, right? Now, where we are now, to speak about, I did not hear anything in the budget encouraging it. The results of that was more like, do I jump out now and go? Because I'm a good employee. I'll be an excellent employee. I'll give my all. Hours don't matter. And you know, so what you did not hear, and most people said it, I need to get out because there's nothing encouraging me to go further. What will come out of this is your true belly people, if you want to call it that. Those are going to be the ones that are going to stand the fight, whether they come out and speak publicly, whether they be a part of some type of group or paper writing or something that starts to say, hey, we're not taking this. We are going to fight this battle to make sure that we come out, because I've put in too much and I have seen results. So it does not mean I'm a failure. It's possible I started at 0 and I'm here today. So why do you want to use the environment to take it away from me? I'm not going to allow it. And that's where the true belly people, and I call them the real entrepreneurs, are going to come out and stand their ground. Many times I'm seeing people do interviews and business people, and it's a little disappointing. It's always about, well, you know, if we just do this and if we just get this and if we, there's no just do this and just get this in order to fix this. This is serious business. It's almost as I wanted to tell Mr. Annisette, and I hope he's listening now. There are 2 things he keeps saying. In my humble view, and respectfully, he keeps saying it, accommodating what he really has to say. This is not about humility. Nothing says that you're not humble and you have to make an excuse for it. This is how you feel. This is your gut. This is about what you have seen, felt, and there's nothing about being disrespectful to somebody for expressing what is real or your view or what you have experienced. It is about us at some stage stop feeding the egos of the others and start to deal with all of us in the oneness and humility. And Hayden keeps using the word, the equity, the equality. It's not existing. So we have totally eroded middle class. There's none anymore. Let's just deal with that, right? There is the upper class or elite or rich, and then there's the class without the C and L. And whatever level you are operating at, understand, you might be driving, and let's just use this, right? You might be driving, I don't even know, maybe an Accord, but you really can't afford the Accord anymore. The person down the street might be driving a March, but similarly, they can't afford the March anymore. So it doesn't matter what you are driving. It matters that you cannot drive your car anymore. You no longer can afford it. You are no longer comfortable to pay your mortgage. You are no longer, whether you're living in a 2x4 or a 10x12, you cannot pay that mortgage comfortably. You cannot write the check or use your card or go online or whatever and pay your light bills and your phone bills. That is not happening. Therefore, if that is not happening anymore, it is not about that there's a middle class, because the middle are now crying out whatever they are. And this has been eroded for years. This is not a today story. The pandemic didn't do it. This has been happening for years. It's been sliding. So the truth of the matter is entrepreneurship, and this is where I keep saying our financial institutions have to have, and let me tell you, Bulse, if the board directors or the people that lead in it are not going to come out of the box that they're in and sit at the table and say, hey, this is not working. I need to do this and actually write things and do presentations that are out of the ordinary and crack that monkey's back. We are not going to go anywhere, because if everybody preserves themselves, because remember, they are all in safe zones financially, meaning their salary is deposited every month at a particular date in their accounts. They are not out there facing the music. So they are the ones that will just keep adding the pressure in the formulas that already exist. Are they going to step out of the box and say, but this is not working for my customers anymore? But I have done a document. I have even given advice to a few bankers, and I'll tell you what I told them. I said, listen to me. In this Tobago space we're in, the formula is not going to work. I want you to do something. This is just an idea. Write your document that fits into the bank's formula sheet, right? And then write one that is creative, that you see will work for the customer. Sit and now it's double work. It didn't look like they were willing to do double work, because 9 out of 10, their first document will go and come back with a X on it. Sorry, can't accommodate. The second one will start to trigger people's minds. Is it that we really need to do something different? But you are hearing the conversations, even for new investments or to get out of the situation. There's still the questions of what is your equity in this? What cash you have to put in? Where they get any cash from? You want to know something? And pardon me, I don't want to sound rough. I'm almost like Mr. Annisette now. But if I'm not banking drug money, then I don't have it right now. So let's get real about this. We need to stop fooling ourselves. We need to stop fooling ourselves. So we need to understand that the real core of the thing is maths. The world runs on numbers, right?
Miss Hadad, let me. I hear you. I hear you. You're correct, you know. You're correct, you know, Miss Hadad. But let me help you with something here now. What is the current narrative of this society? Is the ABC narrative. You know the ABC narrative? A for apple, B for bat, C for yourself. You understand? We keep thinking that we work together and help each other in this society. We keep thinking that the people that we elect and select are mandated to ensure that they are all working on behalf of the growth and development of Trinidad and Tobago. Have you seen that? Are you experiencing that? There is something that is absent, it seems to be. Let me help you with this entrepreneurship thing. I think it was around Mr. Manning's time. Mr. Manning's time, he formed CPEP. You remember CPEP? When Mr. Manning formed CPEP, it was part of Vision 2020. When Mr. Manning established CPEP, the CPEP contractors were designated as entrepreneurs. They were given jobs, work to do on behalf of the government. And what was supposed to happen, and here's the thing, what was supposed to happen is that the CPEP workers were supposed to be going to school part of the day, being trained part of the day, and going to work the other part of the day. And then what was supposed to happen was the CPEP contractor, having worked maybe with the government for 3 years or so, would then graduate from that and have contracts with private sector entities and no longer need to rely on the government to give the CPEP company work for the contractors to do. What happened to that? All right, I'll give you another one. Even before that, there was SBDC, Small Business Development Company. It was located right opposite the Port of Spain General Hospital there. Was that Charlotte Street? Right, wrong there. Well, it's no longer SBDC anymore. It became BDC and then it became Export TT, whatever. I'll give you another one. What about NEDCO? Remember NEDCO? NEDCO was supposed to do this entrepreneurship thing too. What happened with NEDCO? I remember and that too was started, I think, around when Mr. Manning was in office. And NEDCO was supposed to give out loans to entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs, medium-sized entrepreneurs, and help them to build sustainable businesses. What happened to NETCO? Hold on, I have more. I think, and this is going back now, even before this is in another P&M administration, I think. The Fair Share program. The government was supposed to mandate it, make it law that government spending, so capital expenditure when government buys goods and services, that government spending, a fair amount of that ought to go to small and medium-sized entrepreneurs and not just big companies who get the purchase order for everything from the government. It was the Fair Share program was supposed to help the development of an entrepreneurial class.
Yeah.
Let me call it that. Wait, I ain't done yet. even before that, we had a program called the Venture Capital Incentive Program, VCIP, and we were supposed to be utilizing certain companies registered as VCIPs who would raise equity capital to help entrepreneurs and so on to grow their businesses. You want me to give you one more? Any more? No. Let me done there.
All right. So
No, but Colin, before you go.
Excellent, because I really wanted to get feedback on that. Go ahead.
Right. So Hayden, just to say, everything you said is absolutely true, and I'll use two things to tell you. There's one word: corruption. That's the bottom line. And the second thing is, and no, I'm going to share this with you. I really don't have secrets. The government loan guarantee program that we did, I applied, I qualified, I was called and told it's approved, and they needed a document. I submitted it. I was then called by a particular minister who told me that if I didn't come off the media, I'm not getting it. To date, I have not gotten it. So let me say that, and that's their way of punishing you. So I can only put it down to corruption. I can't say anything else. And I have a live story I can give, which I've shared already publicly. I really don't care. From the perspective of they are not my source, and they haven't even understood their role. Yeah. But when you spoke of all those entities, even genuine people who go into those entities do not get approved because they do not sign on to some particular card. So even genuine entrepreneurs or business people who are willing to make the go, if they don't know somebody in there or they have the wrong name, the wrong hairdo or whatever, they do not get it. And it is always given to preferenced persons based on affiliation. And that is sad. That doesn't help the country. And you are so correct in terms of all the money being spent in particular spaces. How do we go from there? And I'm saying it again, Colin, our people, let me say that, our people have to take responsibility. Why? Our leaders are a reflection of us. So to us who are willing to stand up and speak out and say, hey, I don't want you there, or I don't want this there, or I don't agree with what you say, you're a reflection of me. So if I don't agree, I am saying it. That's my right as a citizen, right? But we are happy with the same CPEP and whatever because it's easy, I am getting by, and it's lazy, and it doesn't carry out. And then after a period of time, everybody uses it for political votes. So because each entity there, which people claim starts off as a good vision and a good intention, listen, if my vision is good and my intention is good and I am good, I will make sure that's what's delivered at the end. If I am not good and my vision not good, but I'm using it for another mission, I will ensure that it goes in that direction. Let's be clear about that.
Excellent. And just 6 minutes a question, and I mean, I'll turn it out to the panel. I mean, and I paint it, it's really a double-edged question. One is, given your responses, where will diversification out of what we are in now really come from? If we're speaking about revenue recovery, as Hayden speak to, if we're really speaking about growing leadership if we're talking about coming out of the oil and gas dependency on that energy sector, where will it come from, and what are we willing to sacrifice now for a better tomorrow, a brighter tomorrow?
You see, if I could take it, because from where I sit again, you see, the world is not by accident, and I do believe in that. I have some level of spirituality, and I understand my history. And, you know, we ought to be true to our history. And having said that, the system doesn't lend itself for what you are talking about. And therefore, we need to begin to talk about how do we change a system, right, that is created in a particular way. And I don't want nobody to tell me that they cannot change, because I will say, when I read the history of Rosa Parks, I will say 400 years of slavery. I will say that no one thought about 30 years ago we would have had a Black president in the United States. And I could go and I could talk about what happened in Egypt and all these and in all these places. But in my humble view, if there isn't a level of what I want to call spirituality, and if you have a society where social infrastructure is not part of your society, you have a society where corporatization becomes the norm, where moral values, all right, has now come to what I will want to call vulgar individualistic culture, where bling bling has come to mean more than human life, right, for many people within our society. And we know how that is pushed, and who is pushing that, the bling bling. If we don't start to deal with those issues, if we don't start to educate our children, right, if we don't start to have respect for the institution and go back into our days, all right, people might say, Annisette talking old time, but I remember within a community, when we build in a house, is the whole neighborhood used to come, you cook some food, and you get your house built. Now, in this government program, the government speaks of having houses built by HGC, startup houses, 250,000. They talk about other houses, about 5,000 for between 350 to 500,000, and then they go up to the middle income, which you're talking about 700 and more to almost 1.something million. But we are emasculating the middle class, which is right, the upkeep of every society. When you wipe them out, you wipe out your society. And the wiping out of the middle class is not by accident. And because of our individualistic thinking, because of the corporatization of the society, right? And people have learned not to be collective, but individualistic. We're going to have this conversation over and over. And I mean, I come from a place where I believe if you follow the universal laws and the energy, and you get your spirituality right, you're going to see some fundamental changes that happen. It happened with Malcolm X. When he went in jail, you understand, and look what he come out to be. It happened with, and I'm getting biblical now, when Saul came into Paul. I'm just making these points to demonstrate that there can be changes within a society, but it has to be a collective one where we go back to our morals and we understand as a people, we are all human beings, and so above, so below. We must go back into that spirituality realm. We must go back to our ancestors, mothers and fathers. We must come grounded. with our Mother Earth and all the other things. So I just want to make that point because I don't buy.
I don't run away.
thing.
Hold on.
All
Comrade,
right.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you on the spirituality issue. I hear you. Hear me out.
Yes, I want to hear you.
I want to extend from your spirituality and come to the secular side, because you know we separate church and state in the Constitution. But anyhow, let me say this. Firstly, this society must learn and appreciate how to value itself, its people, first. Secondly, can we find political commitment to the process of diversification? Can you find that? Where is that? Where is that? I don't know. Where? Point to me a group of people in Parliament who are politically committed to the task of creating a diversified economy.
Comrade, that's your mistake. That's your mistake, comrade. That is your mistake.
Hold on.
Because the politicians who have been elected.
Let me finish, comrade.
That is the mistake that we making.
Comrade, let me
we
finish.
depending on politicians who have been elected.
No, let me finish, comrade.
Comrade, let him finish.
No,
because you're saying he running and I won't have time. So I'm challenging.
Let me finish, comrade. Let me finish. Third point. The role of the state in a country, in any country, the role of the state is to be a facilitator, an initiator, and a regulator. And you play those roles with different levels of intensity at different stages of the country's development cycle, right? So you will find that the more developed, larger market-based economies, the role of the state is no longer so much of being a facilitator and an initiator. That has shifted to the private sector. In those large economies, you find that the role of the state is more of a regulator. What is the role of our state in Trinidad and Tobago? Our state, our political state, is still an important player in the economy. Yeah, and so it's both player and regulator. So it regulated himself to himself, and that has to evolve. That has to change, so that we find a broader perspective for the role of private citizens, the private sector, individual citizens. And hopefully you don't necessarily have to have a card in your hand, a certain card or thing, in order to really elevate yourself as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. That you can stand up, and because you value yourself as a citizen in this democracy, you can do what you are inspired to do, what you are passionate about, right? And from there, I am doing this, and I know that I will be supported along the way. Whatever institutions exist, they will support me along the way. They won't treat me as though, I come from outside, I'm a nobody, because I don't have a title, or because I don't have a certain dashiki that I'm wearing, that I can't achieve certain things as a citizen of this country. I'm not even respected as a citizen. When I come, they put me to stand up outside in the hot sun and the rain, right? Talking about health and safety. But I outside in the rain, waiting to go inside to see a public officer. You have me outside, you won't even rent a tent, right? I'm saying to you, comrade, the role of the state is facilitator, initiator, and regulator.
But just to close,
nice.
There is a combination of what Michael is saying, because while you speak of the human being, there are aspects of the universe that contain all of us. And we are really here in collaboration or existence with the earth, the animals, the plants. And therefore, we have to live in a synergy. Otherwise, that there's no disconnect between what leadership is in politics and what leadership is in anything else, in your home, in whatever. So we need to understand that all of those qualities are who we really are supposed to be. And let me say, if you utilize those values, you will not make some of those decisions that are made.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that is where the
Ms.
difference
Hadad,
is.
you are right, but is that what we are? Is that who we are?
No, because the only word, and let me sum it up, and I said it, the problem is the corruption. And it's now ingrained, it's embedded, it's the formula for our country to run by until young people are telling you, but Diane, that's what it is. Why are you trying to be so good about whatever? That's what the formula is. Get with the program. That's the formula.
So what you're saying is that corruption has captured the state.
That's correct.
Right.
And so many, we running out of time. We should have another thing.
Session.
Yeah, on this one, corruption. You understand? Because I have so many things to say about it.
Comrade,
you understand?
I feel
corruption.
We'll coin it differently. We'll coin it leadership. And if we capture, because I heard that theme coming up. You know, I mean, this was really a robust discussion.
Because I would just want to end by saying that we must inspire new thinking and practices with examples of what is possible and what appears to be having an impact on the ground. And if we don't start to do that, we have to do it. And I mean, this conversation starts in that direction. Because I think we are saying the same thing in different ways. But we have a responsibility. It's not the politician to change Trinidad and Tobago. It's the man in the mirror, and we have to start to inculcate that in the thinking and the minds of our citizenry. And we have to go back to that universal, all right, and spirituality that will guide us, all right, that will guide us. And it was aptly put, if you're into those journey in life, you wouldn't see what we are seeing and what is being practiced here as politics, when a leader who's supposed to be the father of the nation can stand up and make those disparate remarks against women and anybody, and no one can say anything. I will end on that note.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you picked up the tenor of the meeting. So I'll just give Hayden just in a minute to offer your closing comments, and then Ms. Hadad, just in a minute, in terms of, I mean, we started on the budget statement and we expanded into so many different areas.
Colin, I don't need a minute.
All right.
Here's what we need. Here's what we need to do.
Yeah.
You see the narrative from here on in? From tomorrow morning. You see, Mr. Hadad said it. From tomorrow morning, this economy and society has to be positioned, oriented, re-engineered to achieve growth, and more growth. If we don't do that, we might as well go and live in Barbados or something, whatever.
Thanks so much for that, Mr. Hadad. Let me use the opportunity. Yes.
Let me just thank you for having me. It's been quite an evening, and I want to say that whilst we started on the budget, to close there, the budget really did not give us any hope. It did not give us any proper timelines, and therefore it was really just a vacuum, a big vacuumous space, you can call it. So that did not give any direction in terms of where we are heading as a people and a country. However, I want us to keep the pounding going from the direction of leadership, whether it be in government or opposition, whether it's been in private sector, public sector. I think all of us have to start to really do some introspection and start to change the way we do what we do and how we think. And we need to stand for what's right. And we need to not participate in the wrongdoing. So many of us have our conscience to deal with. And I think that's what Michael was trying to say. Your conscience is your God. That's the guide in you. And if that's digging you, then you need to stop it. That's the bottom line. And I'll tell you,
COVID ain't going anywhere unless we get up and live. So we need to live. Vaccinated or unvaccinated, we need to love each other and live. And according to one person I heard say, you know what's the only thing gonna heal this? Everybody gotta get a damn cold. So let's just sneeze it out and live on. That's the bottom line, and stop using it as an excuse to do what we are doing to mankind. It is going to have its impact negatively eventually. Thank you very much, Colin and the team.
Thank you so much to all the presenters here. You know, really a rich, robust discourse. Hayden Blades, Diane Hadad, Michael Annisette, all you did. I think there's a power team. I think you all have given us so many themes to move forward. Yesterday, I heard somebody make a statement, text without context is just a pretext. So, you know, it's something that we really need to position, and so many themes. And I really believe, you know, we speak into corruption, but a common theme also is leadership. We need to seriously discuss leadership in Trinidad and Tobago. And, you know, we looked at the theme of the budget, and the theme of the budget took us into so many different directions. So budget statement 2022 has been delivered. It has been thoroughly examined, and its value is resonating differently in the various quarters. But for the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies, we have thoroughly examined those elements and positioned it in its place according to presenter. So we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us here this evening. My presenters, I cannot say it enough. I'm very happy to be part of this distinguished panel and really to engage with you in the virtual flesh, quote unquote. You know, other than this, I would just see you all on some media platforms, but it's good for you to really grace the corridors of the Cipriani College of Labor and Cooperative Studies. And this is an open invitation for future events. So we really want to thank you. We want to thank those who have joined us online and have really stayed the course and gone the distance with us. And it is really an opportunity to enter into further discussion and to continue to utilize Cipriani College as a sounding board for these critical societal issues. So on that note, I really encourage you all to be safe. As Ms. Hadad said, this will be with us. We have to live. So encourage you all to keep safe and really to take the message forward to build up a powerful, more united, and well-led Trinidad and Tobago. So with those notes, I thank you so much.
Thank you, Colin.
Very welcome, Ms. Hadad.
Thank you, Colin.
Okay, good, comrade.
Good to see you, comrade.
Yes.
Okay.
So you all take care.
Okay, yeah.
Bye-bye.
Hopefully, the three will meet again in some other discussions.
But we gotta start some party. I don't know, a powerhouse.
Miss Hadad, please don't start that talking. See that's what's caused trouble. Miss Hadad, good to see you. You know how to see you ever so often in Tobago. Comrade Annisette,
Comrade,
good to see you.
how are you going?